Well, the first event that we did in Erie, we did with our truckers. And the reason that was so important is because, one, truckers actually keep this country running. We've got almost 3 million truckers in the United States of America. And again, if you think about how much of the things that we buy, the things that we use, if the truckers are paying more for everything, if the truckers are going bankrupt, if the truckers are unable to do what they need to do, then all of us are suffering in the process. That's why we came the first time. I think why we wanted to come today was, one, to highlight a couple of President Trump's specific policies. Number one, like I said, they're going to cut taxes on working families and penalize corporations that ship American jobs overseas. We wanted to highlight that. We wanted to highlight the no taxes on tips and no taxes on overtime policy, because there are a lot of folks here working a lot of overtime. I know there are, and they deserve a break as much as anybody in this country. They're going to get it when Donald Trump is the next president. But the final point, ma'am, is again that Erie, Pennsylvania, I think is reflective of what this country could be with better leadership, and unfortunately, how many people have been left behind by Kamala Harris's policies. And let me just make one more observation. This was actually not too far from Erie, Pennsylvania, when I met a woman who told me she was a retiree, her husband was about to retire, and she told me that for 40 years, in good times and bad, she and her husband would do steak night on Friday. And I'm not talking about going to a fancy restaurant and getting a steak. I'm talking about going to the grocery store and grilling out and having that be their special thing, she and her husband, for 40 years. And I think all of us would say it's these little family rituals that actually make life worth living. So for 40 years, in good times and bad, they did steak night every Friday night. And the year that they stopped it was last year, because under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's policies, steak got too expensive. They were helping take care of their grandkids, and so they just couldn't afford to do steak night every Friday night. And I think to myself, what a tragedy and what a disgrace it is that in the world's greatest country, we have American families that are giving up on the rituals that give their life meaning because Kamala Harris is not doing her job. I grew up in a family, and I'm sure there may be even some families in this room who come from similar circumstances where when it got really cold, and it gets really cold in Ohio and Pennsylvania in the winter, sometimes we didn't have enough money to turn on the heater. So my grandmother, who raised me, would say, you know what, we're going to throw an extra few blankets on the bed tonight, and that's how we're going to get through this particular cold winter night. I happen to believe that we have such abundant energy resources here that whether you're rich or poor, if you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to turn on the heating in the dead of a cold winter night. I believe, especially for our young families, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to own a stake in your own community, in your own future, in your own country. But that's becoming harder and harder because housing prices are so unaffordable that a lot of American families feel like they can't afford a home, and a lot of them actually can't afford a home. I believe, my friends, I really believe, and I've learned over the last 3 months, I've gotten such an appreciation for the generosity of spirit of the American people, for the talent and greatness of everyday normal American citizens. We've got the best country in the world, the most beautiful natural resources. We have got everything that we need right here in the United States of America. But there is one thing that is broken about this country, and it is the leadership of Kamala Harris. So I'd ask the people in this room to get out there and make sure that we don't have more of the same. Make sure that we don't get more of Kamala Harris's high inflation. Make sure that we don't get more of Kamala Harris's war on American energy and American manufacturing. Make sure that the people in our country who are canceling steak night and not turning on the heat, that they have an opportunity at a better life. I believe the only way that they're going to get it is to fix the broken leadership in Washington, D.C., and to put Donald J. Trump back in the White House. Let's make it happen. God bless you guys, and thank you for having me.